Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we're going to get into that one scene from Steven Spielberg's 1975 classic, Jaws.
We're going to need a bigger podcast.
Oh.
All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see /here, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media.
That's right. We do
Can't
festivals.
believe I'm still saying that.
I know, huh?
You've trained me like a dog.
Where we find what? No, we do festivals, we do 101s, we do that one scene, which is what we're doing this week.
Absolutely. Can't wait to talk about this scene. One of our favorite movies of all time,
yes,
I think.
Most people's
A lot of people.
movies,
I
yes.
heard Quentin Tarantino recently say that this was pretty much a perfect film.
I mean, it really is.
It is.
There's really... stop the presses. Jaws is a perfect film. But I think revisiting this particular scene, this is the USS Indianapolis scene, the fantastic Robert Shaw monologue scene.
Yes.
And,
just the whole scene on the boat getting drunk, comparing scars.
Yeah, I think once you get, and I said you need a bigger podcast, but I really started watching at that scene, and I think that it's all this stuff on the boat with just the three of them, these three very different characters. You have the one guy who's afraid of the water,
yeah,
and then you have the scientist, and then you have the salty dog, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it is like, I don't know, it's like you could just do hours on this boat of these three characters.
This scene specifically, I think we said it off Micah, when we were talking about doing this episode, just it's probably one of the most important scenes in the episode or in the movie.
Oh yeah,
because we've known all of these characters to some degree, in a professional atmosphere, you could say, however that means, but we've seen them doing their jobs, right?
Yeah,
and we've seen Dreyfuss and Roy Scheider get a little loose and kind of go do their own thing, and Shaw's kind of the outsider here, but we know who he is for the most part. But this is the first scene together where we actually see them, their personalities, their vulnerabilities.
Well, all we've seen up to this point is really just Quint, Robert Shaw's character, just kicking Dreyfuss in the dick, just over and over. College boy.
They call him such a young guy, and I'm like, he looks like he's like 50. Maybe not that old, and he is young here,
right? But I mean, just like you're college educated, you got soft hands.
Yeah,
like, you don't know,
city boy.
Yeah, he's city boy, city slicker, and so and that's very much who Quint is, but then also the mask that he wears to kind of cover up these things that he's been through, right?
Sure.
And it's really interesting, doing some of the research and realizing that there was a handful of different people Spielberg was working with who made suggestions of like, look, you got to have some backstory for Quint. He can't just be this guy, like he has an almost biblical hatred of sharks.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Right.
We get his motive though with this story.
And it went through a couple of people. It went from Howard Sackler, who is a playwright who is working on the side,
John Millis,
doing some punch ups, and he was in. Well, it was Sackler who first said you got to have something here.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then it was am I saying his name wrong? Milius.
Milius. He did Conan the Barbarian, Apocalypse Now,
Apocalypse
Jeremiah
Now,
Jones, Red Dawn, Dirty Harry.
Totally.
Like a massive screenwriter.
And so he wrote an 8-page long monologue.
8 minute long.
Well, it was 8 minutes, 8 page. I mean, I think it was 8 pages.
Okay.
But, and, of course, Robert Shaw gets that and is like,
he wants to take his hand out of it.
Yeah, like, I don't, like, this is a lot of talking for this guy who
Sure.
is not this verbose.
He did a great job whittling, though.
Oh, my God. It is... I mean, this is a masterclass in acting. Again, stop the presses. Robert Shaw's a great actor. Yeah, but for real, it's like by trying to not joke about, he's not joking about the events of what happened, but he's got that faraway kind of smile on his face, you know, and it's like he knows this is the most fucked up thing you guys are ever going to hear in your entire life, so I don't have to belabor the point.
For sure. I love the build up to the speech though, because them getting a little saucy, comparing their scars, you know,
I'll drink to your leg.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And them, you kind of see them bond a little bit, and they kind of like, okay, yeah, we can meet on some level here,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like everyone knows a guy like Quint. I feel like I have a neighbor like Quint.
Sure.
Cowboy Steve down at Kilby used to be
Quint.
He's a fucking Quint,
Yeah,
right? Like
totally.
there's people that we know that that are like this, and or just have like that personality that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
life
and
has kicked their ass around the block and
not
back
their
again.
fault at all.
Yeah,
Either.
and so they're just like they're going to it for the time that you're in proximity of them. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
might be what happened.
They've been through some shit, and then we get the scar comparison, which was hilariously remade in Chasing Amy.
Of course, yes.
Their sex scars, which
Yeah.
is so funny. And obviously, there's no nods to this movie. I mean, this was one of the biggest movies ever to come out in theaters for a long time.
Yeah.
It was in theaters for years, literally years, because it was so popular.
Yeah, totally. You
So
could re-release it in theaters tomorrow.
yeah. Anyways, I mean, yeah, it's a brilliant movie. Stop the presses. Anyways, but you know, we get to the story, and it does give you that Moby Dick moment, like that motive that you're talking about earlier of like the, you know, why does he hate sharks so much?
And like biblical, like, yeah.
Maybe you just thought he was a saucy dog the whole movie and didn't think about like, oh, he actually really truly hates shark, and for this reason. And this Indianapolis story is a real thing.
Yeah.
After they dropped off the Hiroshima bomb, it was so secretive.
Yeah.
No one knew where they were. They were abandoned out there, eaten by sharks. Literally happened.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I didn't, you know, like before this, like
I don't think I knew it was real either until I started doing research. And
I
was
assumed
like,
it had some reality to it, but then maybe with a twist with the sharks or something like that. But like, no, it actually happened, which is wild to think about. Like 700 men died.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, the other part that, like, where this scene takes place in this movie is so interesting to me because it's like...
It's right after them getting the yellow barrels.
Yeah, so this is right after the bigger boat and all this. And there's this moment that is tattooed on my brain from a very young age in this movie that happens in that barrel scene. The shark is circling the boat. Richard Dreyfuss's character, the two of them get up and run around to the front of the boat. And they're both in these like boat shoes, like, you know, these like low top,
like galoshes.
Like, no, not even that. They're like low top, like fucking yacht rock shoes, like no socks, like Doobie Brothers shoes, you know? And they're on the running board of the side of the boat, which is covered in water. And we've seen this shark that's the size of a pickup truck going around the boat. And then it's just a close-up of their feet on that running board, like squeaking and like almost sliding off the side of the boat. And you just go, what? Right? Because you're like, literally there's the thing that's going to eat them that's right there. And so the danger feels so turned up to 11. It feels so real, right?
Yeah.
And then after they've lost the shark and the shark's gone and they're kind of like, all right, and they go inside and they start drinking, the cozy interior cabin of this tiny little boat, of Quint's boat, makes it feel like that they're somehow in a cabin, they're somehow safe and they're away from the danger. But the story of the Indianapolis and the look on Brody's face, who doesn't even want to be out on the water anyway, realizing, oh my God, like, this isn't just this harrowing story of this thing that happened. There's something like that underneath us right now. Right? And all of a sudden, we're not in that boat. Like, we're not in that cozy little cabin anymore. We're like, oh yeah, you guys are out in the middle of the water with one of these things. When he starts talking about the dead eyes, like a doll's eye.
Like a doll's eye.
You know, and then it rolls back and that eye comes to life and all that stuff. And you're like, this is the world's best campfire story.
Totally.
Right? And it's at the climax of the movie. I mean, this is the last like 20 minutes of the movie.
It's the calm before the storm.
Yeah, but it is putting into context everything. And it's
great character development scene.
Oh my God.
You don't really know to think about it when you're watching it, but like analyzing it, researching it, watching it over and over, it absolutely is one of the most important scenes in the movie, especially, because the last half of the movie is them out on the water. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And so like being able to play off of what their pasts were and what we know about them, even the screeching on the chalkboard and all that stuff,
Yeah, totally.
we just get these little bits and pieces and they're all really interesting, but you put them all together and it's, and they get to this point too, where they start singing the Julie London song, "Show me the way to go home." Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And they all start. That's like kind of the climax of the move of the scene. Obviously Jaws comes back right after that, and shit starts to happen or whatever. But them all singing and working as a team in a way, and just kind of like drunkenly being friends.
Yeah.
That shit's important.
Well, and again, I think, it seems silly to say, we need a monologue in here so people know that sharks are scary.
Yeah.
But it does heighten it to almost this mythical level that the shark is not just this animal, but it is this force that will destroy everything in its path. Now, of course, we all know that years after the fact, like Benchley, Peter Benchley very much takes umbrage with the fact that he helped sort of start this idea that sharks were somehow these evil monsters, and you know what I mean? Like he
he did.
Yeah, sorry, bud.
You still won't go in the ocean.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
I don't know.
I'm gonna die on land.
People aren't supposed to be in there. Can you imagine that? You're like, you got killed and eaten by a shark, and you're like, dude, you know how easy that is to avoid? It's like the easiest thing to avoid.
Well, all the people at Shark Week thank him because they were able to make them not as scary again, I think.
There you go.
And that's kind of helpful. But, a movie like this, and just the idea that Spielberg accidentally, created a whole, I don't know what you call it, a whole way to make movies where you don't show the thing that's actually scary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Bruce didn't work, right? Bruce didn't work, and so they had to do all these scenes without it, but it actually created more tension because you don't know what it is. We talk about it all the time. What's in your head is way scarier than...
Well, and then when you do these reveals, you just do these quick, short reveals. To me, when the Kitchener boy gets eaten in the very early scenes in the movie, and there's just that one shot... Because there's a photo that leaked a million years later online of here is a still from this scene, but the footage didn't look great, and it's very graphic of the shark coming out and and the kid's like ah. In the movie, you just see the fins, the dorsal fins flopping over and blood's kind of gushing, right? For just a second. And it's through the perspective of what Brody sees. And that scene still scares the shit out of me because you don't even really know what you're looking at. And you're like, do sharks do that? When they bite something, do they roll? And it turns out they do.
Well,
but you only see it for the split second. You're like, I don't even know what I saw. And that's what makes it really terrifying. So yeah,
Spielberg's favorite scene in Jaws as well. He's noted, he's been interviewed, quoted that's by far the best scene.
It's also the best flex that you can do when somebody asks you about something from one of your own movies is not well, I directed the hell out of this scene. Instead you're like, yeah, it's the Robert Shaw scene, because then you don't have to take any credit for it either. You can be like, I didn't write the scene, and all I did was just switch on the camera and let him go.
The first day they shot this scene, Shaw asked if he could have a few shots just to get loose in his character, and apparently it was one of the worst days on set.
Well, there's certain actors from a certain generation you don't do that with.
Yeah.
Robert Shaw, Peter O'Toole, and
Marlon Brando.
And then I actually wrote it
Peter
down.
O'Toole, that's good.
The other one I said was Oliver Reed. Any of those guys, don't be like, yeah, you know what, you
need to get in character.
Yeah, your character is drunk.
But apparently the next day he came in and nailed it in the first scene. So
I guess Dreyfuss said, Richard Dreyfuss said that was the longest night of any of our lives, and he said, in an alternate universe, that shoot is still happening somewhere.
That's funny. Last thing I'll say, kind of interesting that Roy Snyder doesn't really have many lines here. He's pretty quiet through most of this scene.
Actually, I mean, and he's the one who asks about the tattoo that's removed.
Yeah, but that's like his only line, maybe.
And he doesn't know the significance, and boy, talk about another great bit of acting is just when he says the name of the boat, how Dreyfuss's face totally shifts because he knows the story. And it's such an interesting, like,
it's
the
true.
whole tone, like, just completely alters.
It completely does, because they're joking and drinking to their legs, you know?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
The seriousness on Dreyfuss's face when he's like, oh, you were in the Indianapolis, that does change the whole mood. And then everything gets a lot more somber until they start singing, and then it comes back around or whatever.
Apparently, one of the things in the editing room that they had to cut around, and he admits this too, is Dreyfuss in certain moments kind of stops acting because he's just watching Shaw act. And the two guys famously the actors did not get along with each other at all. They were fighting like for real, not just in character. But that was the part where he was just like, oh yeah, I got to see one of the legends act in this scene.
Crazy.
And so he's like, they had to kind of cut around me because I'm just like, to the point where it's like, oh, it doesn't look like it looks like you, the actor, Richard Dreyfuss, are going, whoa.
Gotcha.
So they had to kind of cut around.
A little too real?
Yeah, a little too real.
Awesome. Well, amazing scene,
yes.
Amazing movie. Of course, one of our all-timers. Next week, we're going to end out our International Horror Festival with 2015's Baskin. And then after that, we'll do another That One Scene. But please like and subscribe. Play along. We'd love to have you along for the ride.
Bye, you guys.
Thanks.